Another year, another Israeli election, another faction split, and another poll suggesting another stalemate. The most recent poll from Channel 12 has the so-called Netanyahu bloc at 58 seats, with the anti-Netanyahu bloc at 57 seats, both of them short of the extra seats needed to bring them to 61 seats, the minimum majority in the Knesset. This is despite shake-ups from all ends of the political spectrum. The left-wing Meretz party has appointed Zahava Galon as their new leader, whilst a fresh list of faces fill up the Labour Party list. Meanwhile, far-right MK Itamar Ben-Gvir has left the religious Zionist party to front his former party, Jewish Power, and Defence Minister Benny Gantz's Blue and White party has merged with Justice Minister Gideon Sa'ar's New Hope party, creating the centre-right National Unity Party. And yet, despite all these changes, the polls are looking relatively similar to how they were before an election was called. So, what's changed? How long are we going to be stuck in a cycle of elections? And how long until these elections will be based on something other than a Netanyahu referendum? Will the Israeli left make a comeback, or is it dead on arrival? And, as we approach the fifth election in 3 years, has anything changed?
So let's get to it. Unions and mergers and breakups and splits. Has anything really changed? Let's kickstart the debate with a 30-second round each, and we pick up the conversation right after. So, Yariv, please take the lead.
Yes, we can see that things are changing because the agenda of the election is becoming more and more extreme. And when we see Itamar Ben-Gvir alone almost get between 8 to 9 seats, this is a message from part of the Israeli public, and the message will create a counter message coming from the left wing. I believe that the agenda of this election is mostly about the values and the basic elements of democracy in the state of Israel. It's not about the occupied territories. It's not about Iran.
It's
not about the economy.
It's continue in a second.
The values here in Israel.
Yes, Ben Dror Yemini, your thoughts?
I do agree with Yariv that nothing is changing right now because we see all of this kind of some right-wing parties are becoming stronger. It's part of the same bloc, so nothing is going to change between the blocks, and the big change should be between the blocks. It does not happen. Right is right, left is left. Meretz is coming back with a new leader, so it looks like that it's going to be a new stalemate with a kind of result that will be just the same like the 4 previous rounds.
Lovely, absolutely lovely prediction.
No, it's not lovely.
I'm kidding, honestly. I'm kidding. Let's conclude this quick round with Jeremy Saltan. Your take?
My take is simple. We see on a policy level a clear contrast between roughly a year of a Netanyahu government and roughly a year of a Bennett government. You're able to see, with the exception of Benny Gantz and his party and the Labour Party, different coalition parties being in either the coalition or the opposition in each one of those two governments. And that gives, on a policy level, a lot for the public to choose.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, based on polls, it seems like they care about other things.
Right. And before we dive back into the polls, and from this point onwards, gentlemen, please feel free to interact. Let's zoom in a bit, talk inside baseball, if you will, before we zoom out. If we're looking at the current state of affairs on the right side of the political landscape, on the one hand, we can say that the primary elections that concluded this week at the Religious Zionism Party is very much to the satisfaction of leader Bezalel Smotrich, same spirit of the list, etc., etc. But the big question remains, yay or nay to a merger or a reunification with the far-right Jewish Power Party, Itamar Ben-Gvir. What are the sticking points there, Jeremy? Why can't they run together?
It has to do with the two most important things in politics when it comes to inside baseball: egos and the number of spots that are in realistic places. As you mentioned, in the Smotrich primary, there was nothing that was a surprise. The 4 sitting MKs after Smotrich took the 4 spots after him on the list. There are no new faces. It's a very boring list. Yeah. On the other side, you have Ben-Gvir, who has all new candidates, and what he's trying to do is bring something that he considers for his constituency, fresh faces and a fresh new way. But what it comes down to is it's the ego between those 2 men, and it's about the fight over who can elbow and get more realistic spots for their various party.
And staying on the right side of the political scene, Ben Dror Yemini, another hot potato that went through several rejuvenations, failed ones, if I may, perhaps. Ayelet Shaked's party, will she drop at a certain point of the race, or will she go all the way?
It looks like if she's not going to pass the threshold right now, I don't know what a surprise she can present. I don't see any surprise. I mean, people in the right wing bloc do not like her because of many reasons. I'm not saying it's justified, but this is the situation. So not salvation is going to come from this direction. The point is that, as we all know, there is not a big difference between the government that we have now and previous governments. I mean, you don't see a lot of differences, and if at all, this government was a kind of a continuation government. Right. I mean, speaking about peace process, speaking about settlements, it's speaking about other things. Unfortunately, I mean, to my opinion, unfortunately, it was almost the same. I wish something else, but it never happened.
Yes, so from a vanity list to long-standing political infrastructures on the left side of the political divide, the Meretz Party, with a comeback of previous leaders Zehava Galon, Yariv Oppenheimer, but oh boy, did voters punish the current/previous leadership.
Yes, it was expected that Minister Nitzan Horowitz will lose his support. Having said that, I think that what is important here is to see that Meretz is actually getting alive again. We saw that because of the sitting in the government and the acceptance of settlements construction and the occupied territory law and orders, so many voters felt disappointed, especially, of course, from Jida Rinawi, that actually contributed to the fall of this government. So Meretz was really under the threshold, and now we can see that we have a new chairman, and again, Meretz is alive. I think it's a very good message to the anti-Netanyahu camp, but it's a very scary message to the Labour Party that might find themselves even smaller than Meretz. According to the polls of last night, I think that there is a very good chance that we will see a united list between Meretz and Labour Party, because both are around 5-4. This is not enough to take the risk and to run by yourself.
Okay, so from right to left, let's move to the center. Not less interesting at all. Finance Minister Lieberman going on the offensive vis-a-vis Prime Minister Yair Lapid. Is it? Are we getting just a glimpse of what is expected to intensify until Election Day, Ben Dror?
Yes, it might happen. It might happen, but this is something which is happening actually in every government, speaking about the salary of teachers and so on. This is something which is happening, of course, because they are actually struggling on the same voters. So, of course, there will be a kind of debate between them. So we should not be excited of it. What is highly important to see is the huge difference between the language of the center parties and what happened actually. I mean, this government was supposed to be a change government. Yeah. It was supposed to be a left-center government. It was not. It was.
I counter you, Ben Dror. I don't think you are right. I think it's a. I think it was obvious that this government.
You did not even hear what I wanted to say, because I'm afraid that you are going to agree with me, because this government was a right-wing government and not a left-center government, unfortunately. Speaking about any
let me react. I do think it was a right-wing government.
Gentlemen, it's very difficult to hear all of you together. Ben Dror, please conclude your remark.
What the right-wing parties, the opposition party said, well, this is a left-wing government. No, it was not a left-wing government. It was a right-wing government. We did not see a lot of change, unfortunately, in any parameters that we might check: settlements, peace process, and so on. You, please.
I counter it. When you see the policy toward Gaza, you see that this government changed totally the policy and opened Gaza to workers to come to work in Israel and also to invest money in the Gaza Strip. This is tremendously important, and this is the reason why Gaza area is so quiet for the last year. Second, we see the resume of a connection between the government and the Palestinian Authority. It's not peace process, it's not even settlements freeze, but it's much better than what we had before. And what is the most important thing here is that the language has changed. The policy, the general policy of this government has changed. It's not a one-man show like Netanyahu. It's a government of few people that are running the business, including former Prime Minister Bennett, and the atmosphere is much less toxic and much more into working for the public.
Remains to be seen, however, Yariv, whether those gentlemanian manners will be kept, or are we going to see a bloodbath that we haven't even mentioned, the fight over this very same electorate between Yair Lapid and Defense Minister Benny Gantz. Briefly, Jeremy Saltan, before we will take a short break, another main question, the Arab vote. Did the Ram escapade of hands-on prove itself to be working?
I guess the jury is still out on that. Look, a big reason, and really the main reason of why this coalition fell apart, was because both Ra'am and Meretz couldn't vote for the Judea and Samaria regulation clause. So we have to see if both of those parties are able to live up to that task. And if they're not, there's a lot of danger for whoever wins in the boxing fight between Lapid and Gantz.
Well, and on that note, we will be taking a very short break now, but when we get back, as promised, we will zoom out again to the overall fight between the blocs. What does it all mean, and whether we're, ready to toss polls and pollings all together. So Ben Dror Yemini, Yariv Oppenheimer, and Jeremy Saltan, you're staying with us. We're taking a very short break, but we're back with the rest of the summit right after, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the summit. Still with us, Ben Dror Yemini, Jeremy Saltan, and Yariv Oppenheimer. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for staying with us. And before we dive back to the debate, let's take a closer look at the recent poll by Israel's Channel 12, News 12. The Likud party of Benjamin Netanyahu is still at the top with 34 seats. Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid party with 23. The National Unity, this is the Gantz Gideon Sar collaboration, with 13. Jewish Power, Itamar Ben-Gvir, 9 seats. Shas, the Sephardi Ultra-Orthodox party, with 8. The Ashkenazi Ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism with 7. Meretz, with this boost of the primaries, maybe, with 6 seats. Labor with 5. Lieberman's Israel Beitenu with 5 as well, similarly to the Joint Arab List. And the Ram party, Smotrich, out of the game. And in this respect, some polls, other polls by other outlets, this very same evening, last night, suggested Smotrich will get 7 or 8 seats. And it's not just the case of this specific party, but many other major gaps between this and that polling. And my question to you, gentlemen, before we get to the polling, what will be the topic of the election? Let's kickstart with a 30-second round each, and then we dive into the polls again. So what's the main topic these elections will be about from this point onwards? Ben Dror.
Unfortunately, it's not going to be about Palestinian. It's not going to be about peace process. It's not even going to be about Iran. It's going to be about again, and I know it because that's what they're planning. Yes, Bibi, no Bibi, and the legal system and the judiciary, and unfortunately, what we had in the last 4 rounds, we are going to have now because this is for them for them, this is the winning card. They don't want to speak. They don't want to speak about settlements. They don't want to speak about peace process because they are lead. I mean, the right-wing parties. Let's admit they lead us to the one-state solution. They don't want to speak about it.
Ben Dror, let's put a stop right here. Jeremy Saltan, your thoughts?
Well, internal polls show us the most important thing to voters are cost of living, housing prices. If you're looking for more realpolitik type issues, you have definitely Iran and the issue of judicial reform. However, based on the media coverage, we see the number one thing is the question of yes, Bibi, no Bibi, which was also the question in the last 4 elections.
Yeah.
So really it's going to be a question of if it's going to be what we actually see in the polling data or if the media will drive it back to where it's been.
Yariv Oppenheimer, any other prediction or yay or nay to Bibi for you as well?
My prediction is similar but different because I don't think it's about yes Bibi or no Bibi. It's about yes democracy and no democracy. This is the issue here. And when we are talking about Netanyahu, it's not just Netanyahu. It's Netanyahu with his bloc and with Itamar Ben-Gvir stronger than ever. And I think that this is, by the way, good news for the no Bibi camp because when Ben-Gvir is so strong, so the fear becomes so big and the ability of Netanyahu to bring moderate right-wing to his bloc is going to be very, very low.
Okay, gentlemen, please feel free to interact from this point onwards. And I'm going back to my question. Are we ready to say bye-bye to polling? Jeremy?
No.
Ben Dror.
I don't think we should... Sorry. I don't think we should say goodbye to polling quite yet. They are important to show us trends. But if we do look at previous elections, the point we are right now in the election process of over 2 months from election day is very different than the actual election results we're going to see. There's also time over the next 2.5 weeks for parties to still merge and split. So there's still a lot of time. I do think, though, that once we get into the final leg, the last polls will tell us a lot. But the polls right now don't tell us more beyond trend.
Ben Dror, it mostly tells politicians how to steer the wheels of their electioneering, no?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the next 2-3 weeks, the main topic will be the fear of some parties that are not going to pass the threshold. It can happen from the right-wing parties. It can happen from the left-wing bloc. Because we know the effect of a new leader, like what we saw right now in Meretz. I mean, for 2 days, for 3 days, they jump from 4 seats to 6 seats. But in the next week, it's going to be the same. 4, and it might be 4 also to the Labour Party. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous because the election might be decided because of the threshold, which is not a democracy. It might happen, so maybe, I mean, there will be a pressure to unite the parties.
Yes, the problem is that every single time this or that leader or party vows to change the mechanism, most notably the threshold, once they assume power, they forget about it because the mechanism worked best for them that time around. Yariv Oppenheimer, what could be a possible game changer? Or are we seeing each bloc reaching its maximum and there'll be no movement between the blocks at all?
First of all, as we can see, there is movement because we saw today that the anti-Netanyahu bloc doesn't have 61, and in this current government we do have 61. So we lost the anti-Netanyahu bloc lost votes. I think it will be a real challenge to gain them back, and especially to use the extremists in the right wing in order to move to the center and to the center left a soft right wing voters that maybe fought to vote for Shaked, but it's really unclear whether she make it or not, and they can come to vote for Benny Gantz, for example. And I think that this is the main question. Of course, next to the question, who is going to pass the threshold, because if one or two parties will not be able to do it, it can decide who is going to establish the new government in Israel.
And as always, it seems that at the end of the day, it will all come down to the coalition-making puzzle and not necessarily the numbers at the end of the voting day. Before we part, dear gentlemen, the same question to all of you. Ben Dror, let's start with you. Are Israeli politicians maybe too lenient on the way out now, in the sense that, you form a coalition, you break it apart, no long-term commitments, everything is tentative, so to speak?
Yeah, it's part of the problem of the Israeli democracy. Just let me tell you one thing. I mean, following what Yariv said, there is a problem because something like 30% of the voters of the right-wing bloc, 30%, support something like peace with the Palestinians, to stop the building new settlements, but they vote for the right-wing bloc. This is a huge failure, mainly of the center parties. I mean, how cannot you get them? And what are the mistakes? Unfortunately, they are not willing to think about what is happening and what is a way to convince those 30% in order to change the whole map.
Jeremy Saltan, final thoughts?
My final thoughts are that the reason the anti-Bibi bloc fell under 61 in current polls is because of the decision of Gideon Sa'ar to go left to Benny Gantz and also Lieberman moving towards the center. This election will be decided on the right-wing votes that are not part of the only Bibi camp.
Right.
And really, the key to this election will be Ayelet Shaked and her party, the Zionist Spirit. If they're able to pass the threshold, that will really be the only way to see one of the sides winning.
Yariv Oppenheimer, in the 20 seconds we have left, if anyone can do it, it's you.
The magic word here is turnout. We will have to wait to see whether Netanyahu is able to bring energy and enthusiastic spirit to all these supporters, and they will go to vote. It wasn't the case last election, and also, of course, the Arab parties. Whether the competition between the Arab parties will make it more interesting for the voters to come and to vote. Turnout. This is the issue.
What a sense of deja vu, gentlemen. Ben Dror Yemini, Yariv Oppenheimer, and Jeremy Saltan. Luckily for us, you will be keeping tabs and analyzing the current state of affairs throughout the coming weeks. Thank you for that.